Welcome to the ALC ChangeMakers podcast. I'm your host, Jennifer Sconyers. What does it look like when an organization doesn't just advocate for people with disabilities, but is actually led by them? In this episode, I sit down with Kerstin Sjoberg, Executive Director of Disability Rights Ohio, to find out. Disability Rights Ohio is a statewide civil rights organization with a powerful mandate: advocate, investigate, educate, engage, and review, all on behalf of Ohioans with disabilities. Federally funded and fiercely independent, the organization is part of a national protection and advocacy system that has existed since the 1970s to safeguard the rights of people with disabilities. Kerstin shares how the organization has navigated a turbulent federal funding environment, why staying nonpartisan and true to mission is their North Star, and what it means in practice to have a board majority of people with disabilities directing every level of the work. Let's dive in. Hi, everyone. Jennifer here, and welcome to the ALC ChangeMakers podcast. Today, I want to welcome Kerstin Sjoberg. Kerstin is the Executive Director of Disability Rights Ohio. And I know Kerstin because ALC has worked with them over the years, just off and on, based on their different types of programming. So just so excited to talk to Kerstin and for you all to learn more about Disability Rights Ohio. So welcome, Kerstin.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here today.
Awesome. It's so good to have you. Kerstin, can you tell our listeners a bit about your leadership journey and how you came to work with this awesome organization?
Yeah. So actually, when I first graduated from law school, I spent a few years at a large private firm, but I was very interested in doing pro bono work and had the opportunity to work on a pretty significant Fair Housing Act case that was about lack of access to public water outside of the city of Zanesville, Ohio. And I did that for a number of years. And when it finally went to trial and we got this really amazing verdict for our clients, at the time it was the largest Fair Housing Act verdict in the nation. That was in 2008. I said, I think I want to do civil rights work full time. This is what gets me excited these days. And so I started looking, and it was just serendipity. I don't know. It's something like that. Disability Rights Ohio was looking for a legal director. They wanted someone that had federal court litigation experience, which is what I had just done. And they were willing to teach me the disability law part because I didn't know that, right?
Yeah.
So it was fortunate that the timing worked out, that what they were looking for really just matched up directly with what I had to offer. And so I came on board in January 2009 as their legal director and have been here ever since, and just took on more responsibilities as I had the opportunity to do so over the years. And in 2020 is when I became the CEO.
That's awesome. Yeah, and I think this is around the time that ALC started working with your organization. We worked on something called the VOCA publication and doing some of that work. I don't know if you want to explain what that is for listeners. There's different vernacular in this space. I don't think we name what that means.
Yeah, we had a victim of crime grant for a period of years, and we worked on a publication for youth, for children, about their rights in youth residential treatment facilities because they experience a lot of abuse and neglect in those facilities. And we wanted them to know their rights in a way they can understand it. We worked with an illustrator, and we brought you in because we wanted to make sure that it was basically culturally competent and would be effective for the audience that we were working with.
Yeah, that was such a cool project and such an introduction to the organization. Can you really, for listeners, name what you do and the uniqueness of Disability Rights Ohio?
Sure, absolutely. So Disability Rights Ohio is at its core an advocacy organization. We cover the state of Ohio, and we are primarily federally funded, which does make us unique as a nonprofit, right? And we have a really key identity with those federal funds that's called the Protection Advocacy System for People with Disabilities. It's been around since the 1970s and was set up to be an independent advocate for people with disabilities.
Yeah.
But really, at the end of the day, we have 5 core functions. We advocate, which is providing people information and legal advocacy assistance on different issues. We investigate, which is part the protection advocacy system was set up for. And that's where we monitor facilities and investigate abuse and neglect. We educate, which is obviously providing information to people, right, about their rights, about disability issues. We engage. So we work with our communities to elevate voices, particularly in policy decision-making realms. And we review, and that's the newest grant for the protection advocacy system. And that's where we review representative payees of people that get Social Security benefits. So someone that's managing their financial benefit for them because of their disability. We review to make sure that they are doing it properly and that there's not exploitation happening there. So,
Yeah. I mean, I think it's just such interesting, important, and nuanced work. I'm super curious, Kerstin. We're in such an interesting and challenging landscape for so many nonprofits and advocacy-focused groups. I'm really curious to learn how you all are navigating these challenges or what choices you're making and just what this looks like for you now.
absolutely. So one of the challenges is that we rely primarily on federal grant funding.
Yeah.
So when there was that very temporary but scary freeze at the end of January, that was something that we were alarmed by, but fortunately that did get fixed in the court process and has become a non-issue to a large degree. The next big challenge for us was that the administration's budgetary priorities would have eliminated some of our grant programs. And fortunately, Congress has not followed suit. They have kept funding, not just for us, but many other disability programs, including funding for the Individuals with Disabilities in Education Act and things like that. They have kept that funding. Well, they haven't actually passed the budget yet as of what we're talking about now.
I know.
They will by the time this airs, but they propose to do level funding the same as last year in Congress. So that's helped. But how we've navigated some of those challenges is we have really put a lot of effort into two things. One, educating policymakers, and two, collaborating and engaging with our communities. So the disability groups that were going to be affected directly and indirectly, right? Because what we do impacts other groups and individuals, obviously, that we work with. If we lose our funding, it's hard for us to lift up the work of other organizations that don't get that funding, but rely on us for different things. So we came together and did a pretty constant effort to bring information to policymakers and to the community about the importance of these programs, what we do, the impact we have, how we all work together very efficiently. So it's that feeding into how we actually help eliminate fraud, waste, and abuse, for example, right? Because we work together effectively to help people with disabilities make use of the services that are out there, live in their homes and communities at a lower cost than, say, an institution, and just be generally productive, active members of their community as constituents of the people that are providing the funding for these programs, right? So that's been one of the main things that we've been doing. And that's obviously taken staff support, but our board's been very engaged. And then, like I said, so many other organizations and community members have really stepped up and collaborated with us collectively.
Yeah, well, that's something that I just noticed in working with you all, that you have such an engaged staff and board, right? People really, really believe in the issues and the work. And for listeners, we did some unconscious bias work with the staff and board over the last couple of years. I'm just curious, how are you all adapting some of those strategies today, right? It feels like there's so much adaptation if that's required. What does that look like for you now?
Yeah. So as you know, in working with you, have made it a priority to make sure that our workplace is inclusive. Our vision and our mission statement is all about elevating voices, empowering people, and achieving equity, right? At the end of the day, that's what we're about. And it's really baked into what disability rights is all about, right? When you look at the disability rights movement, when you look at how even the Americans with Disabilities Act was put together, it doesn't use the word, but it incorporates the concepts of equity and inclusion right in the law. So it is part of what we do, and it is not going to change. The way I guess we've adapted is we're really just trying to stay true to that mission and that focus. We understand there's a lot of noise and narrative out there that's very negative in this space. And to large part, we've stayed out of it from both sides, right? We are nonpartisan. We want to stay that way. We want to be able to help our population with what they need. We know at the end of the day, that does incorporate all the things around diversity, equity, inclusion, because we need the diverse perspectives of our community, which is represented on our board, to make good decisions about our resources. We need to be inclusive in our workplace to make good use of our talents, of our staff. And we need to ultimately work on achieving equity, because that's what we're all about in the disability rights space and movement. Yeah. But we don't have to make it a separate issue, right? We're just staying true to the work and making sure that we can get to where people need us and continue to provide those resources and not get caught up in fighting over words or fighting over a nonsense narrative, honestly, at the end of the day.
Mhm. I love that you're staying true to the work, right? I think that's just so important for groups like yours in this era, in this climate. You are working with really vulnerable populations and communities. So it's super essential that you
Right.
stay true to the work. What's one thing you'd want listeners to know about you all? Like for people who've never heard about you before as an organization, what's something that you would just want to name or make super clear to them?
I think one of the things that's really important about us is that we are led by people with disabilities at all levels. So that starts with our board, which is majority people with disabilities. Most of them actually have a disability. Several of them are also family members. And then we have other professionals and advocates with experience in the disability space. And then at the individual client level, when we do our work, we are directed by the person with the disability to the maximum extent possible. There might be situations where we can't get direction. There are certainly situations where someone has a legal guardian that in order to achieve what the client wants, we have to work with the guardian as well. But we don't take action against what a client that has a disability tells us they want, right? We always make sure that their wishes, their interests are at the forefront and they're leading what we do. And then on the system level, it's the same thing, right? We get our input on our goals from people with disabilities. And in our policy work in particular, that's been a shift over. I mean, it's always been that we were led by people with disabilities, but a shift we've made under my leadership and working with our policy director has been to move even further, like lean further into that and really focus on elevating voices and just providing what people with disabilities need in order to be active in that policy decision-making space. So that included working on accessibility at the State House and both physical and accommodations process. That included just providing information and training to people so that they could go and testify during the budget. And we saw that play out a couple of years ago when hundreds of people showed up and said, we need higher wages for direct care workers. And guess what? Historic investment by our legislature, which is not necessarily something you see in a state budget process, in wages for direct care workers. So it works. But we really have leaned into that principle even more, and we've seen it be effective.
I love that. I love that. Well, there's just so much good stuff that you all do, right? And I think one of the reasons why I want to make sure we share your story is because you and your team work so incredibly hard to protect the rights of those with disabilities. And I think what's also unique is, and that's something that I appreciated, that your staff and board are filled with people who have disabilities, right? And I will just name that the staff and board are wonderful. And they were just so, how can I put it, just honest about the challenges and the needs. We're great at giving feedback about what would work and what wouldn't work for them. And I think that's a huge part of advocacy, right? And so you have that on your team. What else would you like folks to know about the organization or how they can reach you? If there's something that they could really just begin to do to take action with you?
Absolutely. So if you're interested in learning more about what we do, once a week, we put out what we call an Advocacy Matters piece, basically our newsletter.
Yeah.
It's short, to the point. It gives you a sense of what we're focusing on, lifts up some of the work that we're doing. So that's one way. Go on our website, sign up for our newsletter, and you'll get that email. It's usually only once a week. Occasionally, we'll push something else out if there's something really significant going on, but we're not going to inundate you with emails. But we do have another option that is actually a separate sign up on our website, and that's on our policy page. So if you're really interested in getting involved in policy, if you want to know what are the issues with disability that I might want to weigh in on, if there's something happening at the state or federal level that you could testify about or submit comments, or there's other groups that have activities that we share through an email we send out once a week, usually on Wednesdays, called Advocacy Update. And that's part of what we've done with what I talked about earlier of really trying to lean into what people with disabilities want. And one of the things is that we have a staff person who's dedicated to basically providing that kind of support. And one of the things that she does are these advocacy updates, right? To make sure that information is getting out to people about when, where, how to do something, right? To take action, to get involved in another group and be engaged in their communities.
I love that. Well, for listeners, I know like part of this is ways to get involved, right? There are so many great groups like Disability Rights Ohio doing such amazing work. And so there's a way to take action. And for listeners, we're going to take the information that Kerstin has shared, included in the show notes, and share it with you so you can get involved. Kerstin, thank you so much for joining the podcast. I loved having you.
Thank you. It was great chatting with you today.
Awesome. All right, everybody, until next time. Thank you so much for joining us on the ALC ChangeMakers podcast. If you found today's conversation inspiring or helpful, we'd love it if you'd subscribe, rate, and leave a review. It helps other changemakers like you find our show. At Abundance Leadership Consulting, we believe in building sustainable leadership and connected communities through justice, courage, and care. And that mission extends beyond individual leaders. It shapes the way we guide entire organizations through some of their bigger decisions. If your nonprofit is exploring a merger or acquisition, or even just starting to wonder if it might be on the right path, ALC is here to help you navigate that journey with integrity. Our signature fabric approach, fairness-centered accountability through belonging, relationships, inclusion, and collaboration, is a multi-phase process designed specifically for nonprofit organizations. Whether you're brand new to the idea of mergers and acquisitions, or you've been through the process before, we meet you where you are. You can learn more and book a complimentary fabric discovery call at nonprofit-ma.com. For leadership resources, tools, and to connect with our broader community, visit jennifersconyers.com. Until next time, keep leading with purpose, keep building relationships that matter, and keep creating change, one bold step at a time.